Hello, my name is Greg Solt. Today we'll be talking about the blockchain and its use for the supply chain. The three components that I'm going to introduce for this application are the supply chain, and this is normally known as something from a raw material that is manufactured, developed, packaged, and then delivered as a final product. We're going to talk about the Ethereum blockchain. There are a number of other blockchain technologies you could use, including Algorand, Avalanche, and others, but today we're specifically going to concentrate on the Ethereum blockchain, and that's because of its use of smart contracts. And then the third component is a high dollar product, and rather that could be a diamond, an expensive car or vehicle part, or the vehicle itself, and then something like maybe an expensive bottle of wine or expensive bottle of bourbon. Immutability is going to be the component of blockchain technology that's going to be the strongest for this supply chain management application. And the reason I say that is that it is written to an immutable ledger. Immutability means it cannot be changed or deleted or taken away, if you will. Each block of information on this blockchain is carried with the help of a cryptographic principal or hash value. So the blocks are connected to each other, basically a number of different transactions, a number of different blocks that hold those transactions. And then the way that they're grouped is that each individual block has its own hash value, an alphanumeric string generated again for each block individually. Each these blocks contain a hash value, and then for itself, and then the previous one as well. So what I'm trying to say is block 1, 2, and 3. Block 1 will be the originating block, and it will have a hash value that will be carried into block 2. Block 2 will have that hash value, but it will have a different hash value that it will pass on to block 3. And then block 3, again, will have its own separate hash value. But without that preceding block's hash value, that is not a valid block. So in turn, that makes sure that the blocks are retroactively coupled together and not changed. In this functionality, blockchain technology makes sure that no one can interfere with the system or change the already saved data into the block. By utilizing immutability of the blockchain, a company can track expensive assets through the supply chain process because, again, of that immutable ledger, it can see from producer, manufacturer, transportation, and delivery exactly where that's gone. An example of this is BMW has taken it upon themselves to create a part chain project. And what that means is that BMW is a higher end valued automotive, and when they go to build these automotives, they have expensive or higher end parts, if you will, that are more value, and they want to be able to track these and make sure that they're not counterfeit, that specifically the warranty covers them, and they're their exact part that they are contracting out. So they created what they call this part chain, and it assigns individual inventory numbers. And those inventory numbers or inventory labels can be tracked on the blockchain, can be utilized as a input to a smart contract. And then that smart contract will write specifically onto the ledger that part A was manufactured from a certain location, a certain date, a certain time, maybe even by a certain individual. And then at that point put into inventory. So that whole process, all those different things that we mentioned, can be recorded and put onto the blockchain. And at that point, as that part either gets installed into a new vehicle or as a repair part, they can see if there was a defect specifically in that part, where it was made, what factory it was made, who made it, and what maybe specific piece of machinery made. So again, they get full accountability and understanding to make sure parts are not counterfeit, of where they are created. So again, there's quality control and a number of different other factors that they can use specifically to, again, to track each individual part in these high-end vehicles. Expensive wine use case. One of the other use cases for blockchain is tracking very rare bottles of wine or bourbon. Some bottles of wine at auction have been sold anywhere from $1.8, $1.9 to $2 million per bottle. And part of this is because of the rarity of when they are created, or when they're in essence made. And it may be specifically due to a certain wine region across the world. It could be a specific vineyard that it comes from, or it could be a number of different things that give it rarity, scarcity, and value. So therefore, it can be tracked as a high-end valuable asset, again, on a supply chain application on the blockchain. So anywhere from a bottle to a carton or a case, to where it's put onto a vehicle for distribution, all the way to the point where it's delivered at a table to have a consumer or a customer partake or enjoy that bottle of wine, or even at some point maybe in somebody's collection to where they could sell it. So again, there are a number of things that can be considered a high valued asset. And one of the things that works well is putting those high valued assets on an immutable ledger such as the blockchain, so you can identify where that's at, that chain of custody is at all times. So to recap what we discussed, immutability provides the capability for things or records to not be changed specifically on the blockchain. So therefore, as it steps through these different components that we talked about in the supply chain, itself, is that again they can be tracked and identified specifically where they're at. We talked about the BMW use case, how they're using blockchain to monitor the distribution, manufacturing of high-end replacement parts or new parts for their vehicles. Expensive wine case, very similar, we talked about that. So a bottle of wine could be created, again, for a number of different valuable use cases, or for a number of different reasons that could be valuable, again, because of scarcity or because of the way that it was made or who the vineyard was, again, can be kept specifically on a distributed ledger, the blockchain, and be tracked through that supply chain project or process, if you will. So thank you very much for spending time with me today to understand immutability and how the blockchain can provide a valuable resource for tracking high value assets and supply chain process. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.